Recorded live from the Engine Room in Broad Ripple, this is the Voices of Indy podcast hosted by Josh Gillespie. Voices of Indy is a show dedicated to giving you the opportunity to know the musical, visual, and theatrical arts of Indianapolis, Indiana. This week's guest is actor, playwright, and musician Ben Asaykwee. Ben is a multi-disciplinary performer, writer, and musician. As an actor, he can be seen on stages regularly throughout the Midwest, including the Phoenix Theater, IndyFringe, Actors Theater of Indiana, Beef and Boards, and the Indianapolis Children's Museum. As a playwright and composer, he has contributed to Indianapolis theater organizations Q Artistry, the Phoenix Theater, and the Indianapolis Children's Museum. Ben is starring in the upcoming musical ProZack the Sad Elf. This musical is a hilarious and playfully irreverent one-elf show, and it lands at the Phoenix Theater Cultural Center this December. My guest... Oh, hold on. Before we get to the guest, I got to read the advertisement. Oh, getting ahead of myself. All right. So today's show is sponsored by Indianapolis Independent Entertainment. IIE LLC's goal is to help grow local DIY artists, freelancers, and businesses within Indianapolis and generate more paying creative opportunities. Their mission is simple: to establish a network of creatives who excel in areas of need and connecting them with other network members. This way they can help to expand the local art and music scenes. IIE believes that by eliminating some of the intimidating barriers within the entertainment industry, more opportunities will be produced for local freelancers and businesses. This will help Indianapolis become the place to go for art and music in the Midwest. If you are interested in learning more, go to their website, indyent.com. That's INDYINDIEENT.com, and fill out a free application to discuss how you and IIE can redefine making it together. And I just wanted to get right to the conversation before I got into the advertisement.
No, we can't leave them out. IIE, man. They're great. I love them.
Ben Asaykwee, thank you for being on the program this week.
Hey, thank you for having me.
This is an absolute blast. I love getting to know the theatrical scene in Indianapolis because I know so little of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not going to be the all informed, but, you know, I could definitely tell you a few things.
Well, that's...
especially about my show.
Sure. No, absolutely. We want to talk about your show. You wrote, directed, and produced in everything that goes on in this episode, or this play that you're doing, this musical.
Yeah. It's a musical.
ProZack the Sad Elf. So,
and I'm co-producing it with the Phoenix Theater.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure we get that right. Phoenix has to...
I mean, they've been awesome, so it's been a great experience so far, and it opens next week, so on December 2nd or 1st.
December 2nd.
Know that. Yes. And I think we have a preview performance that you can also come to on the 1st if you buy a ticket.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and so we're like now in the deep of it, like at the Phoenix, putting all the bells and whistles on everything. It's great. It's been a blast.
So it's been a blast. What's it been like for you to write this piece? This, you know, I'm used to having people on here who are constant creatives.
Yeah.
So I love getting inside the minds of those who write something large.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I had on a composer by the name of A. Paul Johnson a few weeks ago.
Oh.
And just to have the concept of composing.
Yeah,
and
that's
writing lengthy pieces of music, not just, you know, your 3 to 4 minute pop songs.
Sure, right. Something large. I mean, it takes a lot of, it's an interesting process of understanding even yourself and your creativity. Do I start at the beginning? Do I start in the middle with the concept? Do I create an outline? I mean, there's all these things that everybody does it different. For this specific piece, Constance Macy, the artistic director at the Phoenix, we had a conversation, and I can't remember if I pitched it to her, or I know that that it was discussed, like ProZack. So I had created the character. I created the character about a decade ago.
Okay, so tell me, who is ProZack?
So ProZack, the Sad Elf, is an elf at the North Pole who normally dresses all in black and loves to give a poetry reading once a year as a break for the elves that they likely don't want to go to because it's all like very somber and dark, which of course makes it funny, right?
Yeah.
He's very anti-establishment. He's very all of the things that he considers his job or his, I guess, existence at the North Pole to be a sort of, bondage and entrapment. So everything kind of has that flavor, but yet it seems really obvious that he's able to do this poetry reading, and he's able to, obviously he's given freedom, but as he says often, the oppressive Holly Jolly one lets me have this poetry reading in the break room. Yeah, normally it's in the break room while the elves are already eating dinner, so he's essentially trapping them while they're watching, and that's the fun thing about creating and performing the show, is that then the audience become part of the action, because then they're the Christmas elves, right? Being forced to watch. So because
if it hasn't come clear to people, this is a one-man show.
Oh yeah, it's just me. And the first time I did it was I was just I had put together a cabaret with some friends for the holidays, and it just came to me, and I thought, well, we need a little levity in the show, so I'll pop this out there. And it went over really well, and people seem to like it. He generally turns traditional Christmas carols into poetry of his liking. My favorite poem of his, after he's done a few really I don't know, existential poems, he'll say, okay, let me put his voice on too. This poem is called Sadness. Oh, the weather outside is frightful. The end. So, and that's a short one. Sometimes they go on real long.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the concept of how he came about. People liked it. I kind of continued doing it for just little bits like that here and there. And then I created a kind of one act, basically stand-up kind of show that didn't really include music, until I started thinking, well, if ProZack had friends, what would those friends be like? They'd be kind of the outcasts of the elf world. And so I created this character named Tinsel, who's kind of this goth singer who keeps his hat kind of over one eye. And even saying it's so stupid, right?
I can see this.
And he writes emo piano music that's always kind of sad, but also really funny. And then there's a character named Glister that's kind of a hard rock elf that always wants to sing something really edgy, but then Santa requires a happy Christmas song, so he always sings the happy Christmas song, but with this horrible scowl on his face the whole time. Oh, it's really fun, and it allows me to branch out. And then there's another character called Tinkle, and he has an assertiveness puppet called Mr. Tree.
An assertiveness puppet?
Yes, his psychologist told him in order to make sure he's volunteering his thoughts and feelings more often, he needs to employ this assertiveness puppet so that it can speak for him. But unfortunately, Mr. Tree has turned into this other character that just basically berates and insults Tinkle all the time, which is essentially Tinkle talking to himself through this assertiveness puppet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real messed up, but also a lot of fun, and I have a great time. So then, after doing that kind of one act, and that went over so well that I kind of started doing a little bit more here and there with that, and then kind of just worked out to where when the Phoenix approached me, we were like, let's do something new with it. And so I wrote this whole 2-act musical. It's never been a musical before, except for a couple musical numbers, right? Yeah. It's more been stand-up with a couple musical numbers. But this actually has a plot of some sort. Okay. a loose one.
Sure.
It mostly is just, ProZack. The essence of the show is that ProZack would never do a musical. And so the musical happens to ProZack, much to his dismay through the process.
That's an interesting twist on the musical.
Yeah, on musicals altogether. Well, I've written, this is about I think this is like the 14th musical I've written.
Really?
Yeah. And actually, 2 of them have been produced at the Phoenix before. I wrote a piece called White City Murder that about H.H. Holmes. And that was a 2-person show, me and another person. We had a blast. And then I had a show run for 10 Octobers called Cabaret Poe that actually is coming back.
Oh.
So this is kind of a scoop because it hasn't been announced a whole lot of places, but it's going to be at the Athenaeum next October.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. They have been super great so far, so I'm excited to get in with them too. But so anyways, and I wrote a musical across town playing at the same time as ProZack.
Oh my goodness.
At the District Theater called A Christmas Carol Comedy. That's just a parody of A Christmas Carol, and it's just a blast. It has a great cast, so go over to the District Theater and see that after you see ProZack.
Yeah, let's talk about that too.
Yeah, well, it's every now and then I write a musical that I like to call a Q-munity musical because I used to be the artistic director of Q Artistry. Technically, I still am, but we've pared back a lot since the pandemic. And how that project always works is we employ professional artists or they volunteer their time, and then we open up the auditions to anyone that would like to be a part of it. So if you've just wanted to be in a musical, yet you either don't have any experience or you don't have any know-how or you don't have any talent, that it's okay, because my intent always was to give everybody kind of a glimpse behind the curtain in the sense of understanding what it takes to create theater, especially original theater, and how things are different. For instance, just last night we had a rehearsal for Christmas Carol Comedy, and the cast is wonderful. It's about a 30-person cast, and about 8 of those are kids. The rest of it are adults, and last night was an adult rehearsal, and during the rehearsal, I think I actually changed a couple lines and did things because I'm the playwright, so I have the freedom to do that. Or if you do a show at one of the local wonderful community theaters, there's not always that liberty because they're generally doing something that they have bought the rights for, so sure. And you have to get permissions and all sorts of stuff, so most people are like, never mind, just make it work. But that's what's so lovely about this, and that's just one instance of many different things that can be really great about creating work together and being creative together. So that's kind of where we came up with the community idea. And normally the shows that we do in that vein have a literary base or they come from something else, because most of the time we have whole families sign up. We have a whole family in this show. Yeah.
That's incredible.
All 3 kids and mom and dad are in the show. It's really great. That almost always happens. We have a couple people where it's just a son and mother and things like that. It's pretty great. We have a great time, and it's always a wonderful experience. And the show is going to be a blast. It's going to be super silly. I mean, and it's all ages, where ProZack is technically all ages, but I think if you're 5 years old, you're not going to really get most of the jokes.
Probably not.
There's not anything, I can't think off the top of my head there's anything that would necessarily be off color in a way that would. Interestingly enough, I just spent time with a 4-year-old with some good friends, and I forgot that when you're 4 years old, that dumb and stupid are bad words. And I must have said them literally like 6 times, and every time I would say it, Maya is their name, she would go, ooh! And I was like, oh man, I think in A Christmas Carol Comedy, I have the word dumb, because dumb has been kind of like my go-to now for funny in a way. Okay, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so dumb, you should see it. And I think we say the word dumb like 8 times. So I warned my friends, I was like, when you bring Maya to the show, just know she's going to think the show is like rated R, because there's so many dumbs, and I think maybe even a stupid.
Oh my goodness. The world is coming to an end.
Because we said dumb. I mean, you know what? I am a fan of the rule of not saying dumb in preschool, so I say more power to them, so keep at it.
No, I hear you.
They'll just be having it elsewhere. But yeah, so it's been interesting directing and choreographing that show that I wrote across town at the same time as ProZack, but the great thing about how it's worked is ProZack's a one-person show, so I'm directing myself, which isn't ideal, but for this, it's kind of a fast turnaround project. It's working out okay. But I am having some people come and so that I can say, does this work? Or
sure.
Is this coming across? Because I know it so well at this point that of course I think it works, because it's in my brain.
Yeah.
I mean, but then the other side of it is with ProZack, you can almost get away with anything because he's so weird, and the rules are really not there. Like what you were saying, it's not a traditional musical. He doesn't want to be in a musical. So the whole thing is kind of off kilter. But
I have to say, and I hope you don't take offense to this, but I can't help but seeing some characters from South Park.
Oh, I can see that.
Goth kids from South Park.
Yep.
And when you bring up Mr. Tree, it makes me think of Mr. Hat.
Or Mr. Pooh, or whoever that is.
The Christmas Pooh. Mr. Hanky.
I forgot about him until just now. Right, Mr. Hanky. Oh, why didn't I write Mr. Tree as a Pooh? No, I don't know. I should have. I guess that's kind of ripping them off, but even so.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, I know that your own spin's going to be on this. It sounds hilarious.
Well, and it's, just to be clear, it is definitely not as profane as South Park. Like, nowhere even near that. So if anybody's listening and thinking about bringing their 10-year-old, your 10-year-old is safe.
Yes.
And on that note, your teenagers will love it. Whenever I've done ProZack just as a blip, or like he's appeared at something, teenagers think it's the best because it is irreverent, and it's taking a lot of things and kind of turning it on its side and looking at it different. And one of the things that I really like about him is that he's rarely wrong. Like the things that he talks about, commercialism of the holiday and all these things, he's normally right. It's just so over the top, and he's so on the other side that he's even further than people who actually agree with it. They're like, okay, but calm down.
So the moral of the story is there. It's just a little shot past it.
Oh yeah, he goes all the way. He does not press stop ever. He just barrels through the yellow light always.
That's fantastic. I love this. What's it like to be able to do two plays at the same time? Because, I mean, do you compartmentalize them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, also, there have definitely been things like, for instance, publicity-wise, it's been really nice for me to kind of have, like, here are the things I want to do, and then just make sure that I'm even cross-promoting them and all that kind of thing. Because, I mean, if they like the comedy from ProZack, or if you like the comedy from ProZack, audience, listener, podcaster. Oh, no, we're podcasters.
We're the podcast.
Podders.
Podcasties.
Poddies.
I'm not sure, but that's...
Podlers.
Yes, the Podlers.
So if you're listening, know that you can, if you like ProZack, then you'll like Christmas Carol comedy, because it's just the same thing, but I want to say way dumber, but see, Maya would be really upset. But yeah, so I've been doing that. But then you're right, like even scheduling wise, like this week I'm rehearsing ProZack during the day every afternoon, like for hours and hours, and then I go to the Christmas Carol comedy rehearsals at night. So
man.
Yeah, it's been a lot this few weeks. But then I open that next week, and this next week I won't be able to be at Christmas Carol comedy rehearsals at all, really. Maybe a little bit at the end, but they'll for the most part be on their own, and I have a great team of people helping me with that. So it's been an interesting challenge, but weirdly enough, back when I was artistic director and of Q Artistry, and we were doing things like so often, we would definitely have two projects at the same time more often than not. And so it was one of those things where kind of working in repertory and having things constantly flowing, and there's always a show on stage. It's just kind of, you get used to it, having these different projects happening, because that's not all. I also have future projects happening in late December and January that I'm already having to like finish editing for and do casting for and all of that kind of stuff that are coming up.
Busy.
Yeah.
You don't take breaks, do you?
I do, actually. This year, so I did the same thing kind of last Christmas through, because I did a one-man show called Jingle Sprinkle Times Cabaret at the District Theater, and ProZack was featured in that just as like a little bit, but most of the time it was just singing and having fun.
Yeah.
And then I had like 3 other projects back to back, including a show that went up at the Children's Museum called Boy Robin Hood. And then after that, I literally took 2 months off where I was not really doing anything. And I was able to do that because I was able to stack those things on top of each other. And I kind of learned that from watching, this is going to sound real weird, but watching movie stars. Because if you notice, movie stars come out in like 4 movies at a time.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden Jennifer Lawrence is here and there, and she's in a comedy, she's in a horror movie. And the reason for that is because they do the same thing where they like book them back to back, or they book them close enough that in the editing, this one now ended up coming out when this one's coming out.
Sure.
But then they take like a year off or whatever. They take like giant chunks off so they can spend time with their families and stuff. Because when you're a movie star, you're not with your family. You're in a trailer or whatever. Yeah. I mean, more often than not. So yeah, so I kind of took that as a lead and did it kind of my like mini scale Indianapolis version, not in the movies, and said, well, if I pack all this stuff in, I can make a living and still take this time off. And I'm kind of doing the same thing next because I have those next projects and that kind of blends into the spring. And then I'll take time off before Cabaret Pope comes up next October.
Man.
Yeah.
It still sounds like it's constant going, even though...
Yeah, it is a little bit, because even in that time off, you're still having to do pre-production stuff and all of that. So, but, a good friend of mine, Claire Wiltshire, who's also a performer here in town, we used to talk about the hustle and how, especially in the theater arts, but it's also very, very much happening in all the art forms here in Indy, musicians, dancers, oh my gosh, don't get me started on poor dancers, and then visual artists. The hustle is a real thing in Indy because it's not as easy to make a career here full time, so you just have to keep yourself going in order, and then also likely have side gigs, whether it's teaching in your field,
sure,
or doing other things, waiting tables or whatever. And Indy is coming up in the art scene still. I still think of us as coming forward and keep coming, but there's still little ways to go to make sure that we don't lose people because of the fact that they just can't get enough work or there's not enough to go around. But this podcast is doing a nice job in helping with that.
Thank you. Honestly, I'm doing this, and I know my listeners, the Podlers, are probably getting sick and tired of me saying this every podcast, but it still rings true. I'm doing this because I don't know enough about my own city, and I know about. I'm a musician, so I'm somewhat familiar with the music scene.
Yeah.
You can't avoid the art scene in Indianapolis. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and I think I think if there's any of our genres that have really taken off, and I think that's because, to be honest, they got a lot of funding and money put into that, and it'd be interesting to see that some of that interest go like in some of the other areas too.
Exactly, and so that's why I wanted to. I was like, where's the areas I'm weakest?
Yeah. Clearly
theater. And so, I reached out to Tony at the Phoenix.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
And Tony's been all on board, very helpful.
Yeah.
The first act I got on here was Tick, Tick, Boom.
Oh, I bet that was fun. I didn't get to listen to that.
Oh, that was a fun show. But, podcast.
Yeah.
But it was also a fun show.
Oh, yeah. It's a great show.
I admitted towards the end, even though I'd seen Tick, Tick, Boom, I'm actually not a fan of musicals.
Yeah.
But I think that they've changed my mind.
Oh. Well, look at you.
Right. It's growth.
You're a big boy now.
Right? I enjoyed the Netflix version of Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yeah. People have been saying that's really great. I haven't seen it.
Oh, you should definitely check it out. But when I watched the Phoenix's version,
yeah,
I was so involved in it that I was like, wait a minute, what about this part? What about this part? Where was that part?
Oh, right.
That's
great.
But still, they did such an amazing job that, it was like a light switched on. And I'm
that's really good news.
Why have I been so antagonistic towards... They just performed it so well, so professionally. It was, and I think that speaks to the quality of the actors that Indianapolis can bring in.
Yes. Or has.
Right. Yeah, because Eddie Dean is from Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in that play, or that musical. And so it was, and Eddie was incredible. And what was funny about that show was because, Tick, Tick, Boom, it's a big cast.
Yeah.
But you had 3 people playing it here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And to see everyone but the main character playing different people.
That's super fun.
It was very fun.
I love seeing stuff like that too.
It was and some of the character switches were so hilarious. Because Eddie actually had to play one of the main character, Jonathan, his agent, which is a woman.
Yeah.
And that had been played by the female cast member throughout the
I
entire
love that
program,
kind of thing. I love
then
love
all of a
it.
sudden, for one scene, he has to play her.
Because of whatever reasons. Maybe
Exactly.
she's busy or they're talking to themselves or whatever. Yeah.
And it was hilarious.
You know, I have a secret to tell you, actually. Let me get a little closer, dear Potter listener. I actually do not like musicals.
Oh, you're like ProZack.
But, I mean, I have a few that I like, but like the general musical, I will always take a pass. Like almost always. I still haven't seen some of the movies like In the Heights that I feel like I should see. I haven't watched Hamilton on Disney Plus, even though I have it.
Yeah.
I have no excuse.
My kids have watched it tons of times, and I still haven't yet. And I owe someone, Emily Ristine Halloway. I owe her to watch Hamilton on Disney Plus, and I haven't done it yet. So Emily, if you're listening to this, I promise I'm still going to watch it.
Oh, Emily, he will keep his promise.
I promise you. I made that promise. I'm going to watch it.
And you should keep that if you made it to Emily, because Emily is like she's pretty much an indie theater icon. So
yes.
Yeah. So if you made a promise to her, you basically made a promise to the indie theater gods.
Oh man.
And their wrath shall come upon you if you don't keep that promise.
That I believe, honestly. Especially if I want to keep talking to people within the theater scene. I better watch it.
Yeah. But on that note of like not being a musical person, so when I wrote Cabaret Poe, it kind of just happened naturally because I came upon Edgar Allan Poe's works and I loved them. And I was like, gosh, I was like, I wish that these could be brought to life in a way that if you put them all together, it gets to be by the third or fourth piece where you're like, oh, guess what? They die at the end. You know, it's not really a shock. So instead, like owning that and making it way over the top macabre and way like everything's super gothy and dark. And so we did it and people loved it. And one of the things that I fell in love with were we had people come to that show that had either never seen a play before, had definitely never seen a musical, and they were won over to the world of theater by that piece.
That's incredible.
Because they loved Edgar Allan Poe, so they came for that reason, right?
Yes.
And then they were like, oh, this is what a play can be. Doesn't have to be what we did in high school, Carousel or some dumb shit. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Man, that poor 4-year-old.
I know. If dumb isn't bad enough, now I'm actually cursing. Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
And I think ProZack is a similar piece in that you don't have to like musicals. You definitely don't even have to like theater, because I started as a stand-up, right? So you just have to be willing.
I can tell.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's funny is speaking of that note, I was a musician for years. I lived in Nashville. That's what I did. I was a vocalist and a pianist. And then when I moved up here, it was at a retail job that one of my friends told me I was the funniest person she knew. Okay, now first of all, I should say she must not know a whole lot of people. But second of all, I was like, wait, what? I never even thought of myself in that way. And it opened up this whole world to my brain about like, well, okay, but I love to laugh. So I'm going to just write stuff that I like to laugh at. And if other people like it, that's great. But really, like, I mean, I'm not going to write stuff I don't like to laugh at, because then I'm going to be miserable. And then being able to perform it myself has just been like an extra gift to be able to like do that at the same time. And it's been a blast.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah. And, you know, everything from even the serious pieces that I've written in the past, I feel like always have had some humor in them, because that's kind of the way I look at life, is that you got to be able to laugh.
There has to be some levity in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Not everything can be serious.
Yeah. I mean, ProZack would definitely disagree.
Definitely, but some of his songs, though, are...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait for audiences to see it. The first song that actually is in the show, ProZack, I'm using air quotes right now, podlers. He sings, but he doesn't sing. He's speaking, but the music is making it a song under him, and he's very upset about it. As he's like, this is not a musical, and the music's like, bam, or whatever, and it's like, stop it. I can't wait. It's probably one of the dumber things I've ever written, but when I say dumb, I mean like that I can't imagine somebody not at least getting some enjoyment out of it.
Please tell me that the music itself is very joyful.
Oh, all of it. Yeah, the whole thing, all of the music. The only music that's not not traditional sounding, and it's like Christmassy holiday-ishness, are the two songs that Tinsel, the little emo elf, sings, because he plays the piano. But even his songs I wrote a little more, they aren't minor keys, they're all like major keys again or whatever. They're still a little dissonant and stuff, but for the most part, it's happy sounding stuff with like weirdly sad lyrics or like, oh well, one of his songs, this is giving something away, but it's just like a little hopefully carrot to get you to see the show. One of his songs is called Christmas at the Asylum.
I love it already.
And how you would celebrate Christmas if you were, in a straitjacket or whatever.
I love this already. I have to see this play.
I hope you do. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
The cast is great.
I've heard wonderful things about the cast.
I mean, some of them are assholes, but I just cursed again. I'm so sorry.
Oh, poor, was it Maya?
Maya,
oh,
God bless
Maya.
her. I'm gonna tell her parents, don't let her listen to this.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about ProZack. We've talked about A Christmas Carol. Your take on it. I actually kind of want to know more about the Poe stuff, but
yeah, I can come back on for that. There's plenty of time.
Sure, absolutely. But tell me about Ben, and how did you get into theater? How did you seem to have covered so many genres of artistic work?
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself.
Well, I was raised in Anderson, Indiana, which is just north of here, and I was, I want to say I was educated in theater early on in community theater. I think mostly because my sister was in dance and wanted to do theater, and I just always wanted to do everything she did because I adored her.
Oh, that's cool.
And, I mean, that was then. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Now,
I adore her now.
Don't ask me about her now.
And so we kind of ended up in theater, doing community theater. And then I had got my first professional gig as an artist. I think I was 11 in a world premiere musical called Gettysburg. Don't get too excited. It was, yeah, and it was at the Paramount Theater, and it was fun, and I just wanted to do theater. But then all of a sudden something switched in high school, and I think it was a lot of self-doubt. I hated the way my voice sounded speaking, but I wanted to sing, and that was like my first inclination. And it really always was. I just was using musicals to like get that out, right? So then I started writing music, and I considered myself a musician at that point. And that's when I decided to move to Nashville. And
Smart move.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. I had a great time. The only reason I even ever moved away was because I was starting to have some vocal problems, and I was working mostly studio work vocally. And you know how this kind of thing works, where like you're booked in for 2 hours, and let's say I was scheduled to do maybe these 3 or 4 different types of commercials or something like that. I book in, it works pretty fast, and you move pretty fast, and my voice kept wearing out like towards the end, and I was like, this isn't normal. So I went to the Vanderbilt Voice Clinic, and they did all sorts of fun stuff, and found that I had severe allergies, and all my allergies were like Tennessee.
Oh no, you were allergic to the state.
Basically, right. Like they were like weed mix number 13 or something, and they're like, and guess where that is? Tennessee, and stuff like that. So I took that opportunity to say, you know what, I'm gonna do a restart real quick and move to Chicago. And I did a pit stop here in Indy on my way because my family's here, and then went to Chicago. And when I went to Chicago, so I had started writing music more, and I was performing it, and I performed at a thing here in Indy, and I was playing and singing at the same time, which is not my favorite. And while I was playing, my hands were shaking so bad that I was clunking through everything. Oh, no. And so I was I remember at the break, I was sitting in my car, and my partner at the time came out, and he said, it's been 10 minutes. Are you going to come back in? I was like, I don't think so. I think I'm just going to go. I'm in the car already. And he's like, no, the room is full. Like, you've got to come back. And it was pretty terrible. I was so nervous. Mm-hmm. So then when we moved to Chicago, I was like, okay, what's the best way to get unnervous? Do it all. Just send yourself to every audition, go to all of it. It just you'll get so used to it that it won't matter. I went to auditions for things that I was not called for. Like it would be like, we need 14-year-old blonde females, and I'd show up. I mean, not that extreme, but but stuff like that.
Sure.
And I was like, so getting turned down will be the ultimate, right? Like just having no said to my face a million times, I'll just get used to it and it won't even matter.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like the full first 6 auditions I went to, I got all of those.
Oh.
So that was
fired on you.
It did in a way.
Say no.
I know. It did in a way, but then it turned out to be positive because I was doing so many different types of things that I really didn't have time to get too stuck on my ego and too much stuck on myself. I was and so many new things. Like for instance, I got a job on this thing called the Spirit of Chicago, which was described to me as like a theme park on a boat. So our first rehearsal, we get in there and we're learning the song Gonna Be Starting Something by Michael Jackson, which I love Michael. So I love his stuff. But at the same time, I was like, wait, this is the song we sing as the boat takes off? And already I had this like gross out, like throw up feeling in my mouth. But then I was like, okay, I can get over that. But then when it came to, there's a part of the song that's like, Mama say, Mama sa, Mama kusa, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we were all singing. It was like all white people except for maybe like one black person. And I was like, this. So then we had a break. I left. And I sent him an email and I was like, I'm sorry, this was not a good fit. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I was only at one rehearsal, so it couldn't have been that much wasted time. But,
sure.
But things like that. So I started to like find my own voice and all of that. I got these gigs in theater again. I had the experience from when I was a kid, and it seemed to be going well. And I was working. The only trick was that I was getting paid well and performing, but I wasn't happy. I was in like South Pacific or these things, and I felt guilty because I wasn't really enjoying myself when there are people who would have been, right? Like I was taking a space when somebody else could have been, somebody's dying to do this show or whatever show.
Yeah.
So I accidentally kind of fell into then writing, and I started writing things to then perform in and all of that. And that just kind of happened naturally while I was in Chicago. I started doing cabarets, which was putting my 2 favorite things together, or 3 really, writing some theatrical elements and singing and music. And those went really well. And then, from there, Cabaret Post started. That was the first piece I wrote. It started coming into fruition, and all of it just kind of went from there, and I never stopped writing since. I literally can't stop writing. I write something every day.
That's good practice.
It is, because if I don't do it for like a month, when I get back into it, I feel like I am made of mud. I feel like I can't, right? No words. What are words?
What are words?
Speak human, please. Literally. That actually happened after this last break I was telling you about.
Yeah.
I stopped writing for a minute because I was like, refresh yourself. Get your stuff together. And sorry, Maya.
It's okay.
Okay,
it's
good.
Okay.
Get your shit together and give yourself a full cleanse, right? Because I don't want to end up all my stuff sounding the same, whether it's the songs or the pieces. I mean, some of it comedy-wise, I'm sure some people come to see Christmas Carol comedy and they'll be like, well, that's a Ben joke. I could see that a mile away. But hopefully I've refreshed a little bit. But when I went back to starting, especially the writing songs for musicals, I found myself where I'd think, okay, I finished that one. And then later on that day, I'd be either I'd be singing it to myself or singing it in front of someone else. And one of 2 things would happen. They would either say, oh, are you singing that song from blah, 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 one of the previous things I've written? And I'd be like, no, but now you've just informed me, as you rightly should have, that that's the same stupid ass melody or whatever. And I'm like, I didn't even put it together. Or worse, they would say, oh, I know that song. It's blah, 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 pop song or something that I probably inadvertently heard on an elevator or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, oh, shit. And it did, and then you're like, oh, yeah, I literally ripped that off. And it's in different contexts and stuff like that. So sometimes I can go in and be like, well, I'm just going to change these 3 or 4 notes and it'll sound a little different because it's not a pop song. It's a song in the middle of a musical. Yeah. and then, realizing that the verse is nothing like that, and it's not really a ripoff. It's just those few intervals of music, right? That people would probably recognize or whatever. They'd say, "Oh, Katy Perry." No, it's Ben Asaykwee, but that's okay. Let me rewrite this bullshit real quick. Yeah, but so then that was kind of like getting back into it, where I don't think that was happening when I was writing a whole lot. So it's one of those things of, I think breaks are great, but you're right. It's like it's better to like keep doing it and maybe find a different way to refresh than like taking time off.
Well, no, taking time off, I think, is probably good just mentally.
Yeah.
But
when you love to do the thing you love, maybe that's it. Don't do things like you're thinking that are commercial or whatever. Just do it. Sit down and be creative.
Yeah.
For whatever.
That's the part that I have trouble with.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because when I write music, lyrics are the last thing to come. And it's been very difficult for me to write lyrics. And I'm trying to get into this habit of where I will sit down and I will just write.
Yeah.
Because that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And
it's hard though, because it's like,
hard.
And like setting aside the time and all of that, because you can just fill that time with a million other dumb things.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't do that today. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, what did I do today? What I should have done, I didn't do.
That's right. What makes it? I wonder why you write the lyrics last.
I don't know. I feel like I come up with complex ideas.
Oh, you mean like so you're like, this song is about this, but I'm not going to worry about the lyrics.
Yes,
I see.
I'll have the tune, and I'll know what the tune, to me, it's like, okay, I know what I want to say here with this tune.
Yeah.
But the concept, so I have the concept.
Yeah.
But diluting that into, easily transferable words.
Right, yeah. It's tricky sometimes.
That make a song.
Yeah.
It's just like.
Well, at least you're not like having this like I don't know, ephemeral musical moment and just writing melodies and then being like, now I have to write lyrics to this and I don't even know. I mean, you're already starting with a concept and all of that. I think that probably means you're just getting in your own way for the lyrics, I think, because the concept is the hardest part, right? Like even for writing music for ProZack, I was trying to connect the dots of scenes to song, scene to song, right? So there would be music throughout. That's what makes it a musical, right?
Yeah.
And being like, well, what's going to be the theme of this song, like in the middle of this scene or whatever? So that sometimes to me is the hardest part, is figuring out what that's going to be, or just, just in songwriting, period. For me, the lyrics almost always come first, or it's like the lyrics in a melody.
Okay.
Like I have a song called If You're Gonna Break My Heart, and the first thing that came to me was, if you're gonna break my heart. That was the first thing I sang. The rest of the song built its way forward and backwards from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed that I've written a couple songs recently where I actually had the first verse and I was able to go in chronological order.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of times I find myself where I am either like, I'll be in the bridge somewhere. I mean, like, what? This is a transitional portion of the song. Why am I stuck in the bridge?
I love that, though, because it's like, this is a damn good bridge, right? You're like, this is a damn good bridge. Now I just need a song for it.
That's right.
I love that.
What am I doing here?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's, I don't know. Writing is such a... I know people get upset sometimes when you're like, oh, it's such a mysterious act. But I'm sorry, there is always going to be some mystery behind writing. Even if you do it every day and you practice every day and things can just start coming off the top of your head like that.
Yeah.
But there is still it's not a science. Because it can start anywhere.
No. And I just saw a writer recently talk about how everyone wants it to be this romantic thing where I like wearing a cardigan at my lake house and I get my instrument out or whatever and I'm like, I'm just going to create today or whatever. And it's like, it's normally nothing like that.
No, it's not.
Like 9 times out of 10, it's, oh shit, I got to get this done today because I've got to have time to edit it the next day and then it's due the next day after that or whatever. Or you're just like in a car and this comes to your mind, and I'm scrambling to get my recorder to be like, I've just written a whole damn song in this stupid ass car where I can't like write it down or play it on a piano or anything. I have to sing it into my, or recorder while I'm stuck in traffic. I mean, that's the reality, I think, of like all the creatives and like what we really are doing. Yes, of course, there's some time where you're like, especially if you're a choreographer or something, you're like, book the studio and you can make that work. But even sometimes that doesn't, if the muse doesn't come, you're just moving around.
Right.
You're just playing, or that's probably the time when I write the song I already wrote. Yep, that's exactly where I'm like, oh, I can't do this, and then I'm forcing myself, and then that's what comes out is something that's already been in there. That makes sense now. I just had an epiphany.
Well, there you go.
There you
right
go.
Here on
this
this
is like a therapy session. Thank you.
Listen, Podlers, there's an opportunity for you to grow here.
Always.
Oh, Ben, this has been a blast.
Me too. I've had fun too.
I've had an absolute blast with you. One last plug for both of your Christmas shows.
Yeah.
ProZack the Sad Elf.
Yep.
December 2nd through the 23rd at the Phoenix Theater. Go to their website to get tickets.
Yep. I think it's Phoenix. Phoenix Theater.
I wrote this down.
.org.
Hold on, because I didn't want to forget this. It is where to go. There we go. Tickets on sale now. $25 to $32 at thephoenixtheater.org/buy-tickets.
Yeah. Don't end up buying a ticket from Phoenix, Arizona.
No.
Because that can happen. There is a theater out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so watch out. I mean, ProZack's not playing out there. So, well, if he is, somebody's in trouble.
So was definitely in trouble. So that is Phoenix Theater, R-E, not E-R. phoenixtheater.org/buy-tickets. And the one playing on Across Town is...
I think it's indydistrict.org, but regardless, you could probably just Google District Theater and Christmas Carol Comedy. Yeah. You could also go to my Patreon. And all those things are on there as well. Yeah. And it's just patreon.com/Ben Asaykwee, which is BenAsaykWee. You could probably also just look up any spelling of Ben Asaykwee, and I think you'll probably
come across you somehow.
There's only one of me. Yeah.
Oh, man. And I want to thank the Engine Room Recording Company, which is where I am recording this. And they are located in Broad Ripple Village, just north of downtown Indianapolis. And they specialize in making your projects go. Podcasters, bands, audiobookers, rappers, singers, songwriters, and everyone in between. The Engine Room Recording Company has the engineers, the equipment, and the environment to fuel your projects. Check out Broad Ripple's recording studio by visiting for more information on their services, artists they've recorded, and gear they have at engineroomrecordingcompany.com. And be sure to visit their Instagram page by searching at Engine Room Recording Company. Ben Asaykwee, ProZack the Sad Elf, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you had me.
I am glad I had you too. And shout out to Tony Crawford at the Phoenix for
helping us set this Tony.
Up. It has been a blast, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime soon.
I'd love it.
All right, thank you. This has been Josh Gillespie for my guest Ben Asaykwee. This is the Voices of Indie podcast. We'll see you guys next time.